I'm going to walk you through designing a 21 square foot section of my garden that'll yield 100 pounds of produce and includes 10 different types of vegetables. Estimated harvest for this 21 square foot garden bed is 112 pounds. That equals 5.3 pounds per square foot, giving us a total of 17 pounds of veggies so far, and we have just harvested our spring crops. Let's start by getting to know the gardening space. The garden bed we're going to be talking about today is 3 feet deep by 8 feet wide, and it has a 1-foot path running down the center of it that leads to raised beds I have directly behind it, leaving me with 3.5 feet of growing space on either side of the pathway. This gives me a total growing area of 21 square feet. The garden faces south, which is ideal for growing sun-loving vegetables. Each of these squares represents 1 square foot. The 1 square foot measurement is important to me because I like to use the square foot gardening method, which operates on a 1 square foot measurement for plant spacing. Important context when we're talking about the planting dates I mentioned throughout this video is my last frost date is May 24th and my first frost date is October 10th. Starting on April 13th, we will plant out 4-week-old lettuce transplants. We're going to be planting a total of 24 lettuce plants, 4 per square foot. I have dedicated 6 square feet to growing lettuce. I estimate to harvest lettuce between May 11th and June 30th. The way I harvest lettuce is by picking the outer leaves of the lettuce plants off, leaving the center to grow. I find this gives me a consistent supply of lettuce without having to succession plant, and the plants just last for longer. The varieties I'll be planting in the spring are Merlot, Butter Crunch, Flashy Butter Gem, and Marvels of 4 Seasons. I love having a colorful lettuce blend. Estimated yield per plant is 1/4 pound, giving me a harvest goal of 6 pounds. Radishes will be put in by seed directly into the garden on April 13th. They are placed on the outer side of 10 of the squares to allow for summer crops to be planted into them later in the season. I'm not succession planting my radishes because the goal here is to get as much produce as possible for the garden space and not to have an even supply of veggies available. This means I'm going to have 80 radishes ready all at once, which I'm going to need to preserve in some fashion. The way I use radishes is mostly as salad toppings, therefore a sweet quick pickle is a great way to preserve them for use in salads. I estimate that the radishes will be ready to harvest on May 7th. The yield per plant is 0.05 pounds, giving me a total radish harvest of 4 pounds. Green onions are the next crop to go into the garden in the spring. They will go into the garden as transplants. I plant 3 green onion seeds per cell, letting them grow up together. As the green onions grow, I'll harvest as needed until the crop we plant in the center needs the room. I expect the onions will be ready to harvest on May 23rd. The estimated yield per plant is 0.025 pounds, with a total harvest of 2 pounds by the time they're all harvested. The last of our April 13th plantings is carrots. They will be started by seed in the garden like the radishes. Again, no succession planting for the carrots, so I will have 32 carrots all ready to be harvested at once. I estimate that the carrots will be ready to harvest on June 22nd. The estimated yield per plant is going to be 0.13 pounds for a total harvest of 5 pounds of carrots. Fast forward, we're now past my last frost date on May 24th. The radishes will likely have been harvested out of the garden, but if not, we are going to plant right into the center of them. We will be planting the first of our summer crops, which is tomatoes. I'll be planting 10 indeterminate tomatoes that will grow single stem up tomato spirals. 4 of the tomato plants will be cherry tomatoes, and the other 6 will be Amish paste canning tomatoes. All the tomatoes will be put into the garden as transplants. I'll be planting my cherry tomatoes on the back side of the bed because I have little kids and the little ripening green cherry tomatoes are perfect little choking hazards. But if you have older children or no children, it would be better to plant your cherry tomatoes on the front side of the bed because you will be harvesting them more often than the paste tomatoes. I estimate that the Amish paste tomatoes will be ready to harvest on August 22nd, and the cherry tomatoes we will begin harvesting July 28th. For the paste tomatoes, I estimate to harvest 8 pounds per plant, and for the cherry tomatoes, I estimate to harvest 5.5 pounds per plant. The estimated total harvest of paste tomatoes is 48 pounds of tomatoes. 48 pounds of paste tomatoes is a good amount to get your feet wet with canning and preserving, especially if you're new to growing and preserving your own food. For cherry tomatoes, I estimate that we will end up with 22 pounds of cherry tomatoes. If you're overwhelmed with the amount of cherry tomatoes, you can dice them and freeze them, and I like to use them in quiches during the winter. In Three Sisters style, I'll be maximizing my vertical space by planting a pole bean plant per tomato. They will be started by seed in the garden on May 24th. The tomatoes will already be up and growing, so they should hold up to the green beans growing on them. Plus, they have the additional support of the tomato spiral to climb. I estimate that we will start harvesting green beans around August 2nd. The estimated yield per plant is half a pound, for a total harvest of 5 pounds of green beans. The last of the summer plantings is going to be acorn squash, again, Three Sisters inspired. The green onions will be removed when the acorn squash needs more room. The acorn squash I'm growing is called Renardo, which is a bush variety, meaning it should be more respectful of my garden space. I estimate that we will be able to start harvesting acorn squash August 7th. This variety has a quick maturity date. The estimated yield per plant is 6 pounds. I'm expecting to get 3 to 4 acorn squashes per plant, each yielding 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds, giving us a harvest total of 12 pounds. Now we are in July. Our spring crops have been harvested out, giving us a total of 17 pounds of veggies so far, and we have just harvested our spring crops. As a reminder, that was 6 pounds of lettuce, 4 pounds of radishes, 2 pounds of green onions, and 5 pounds of carrots. Our squash plants are growing into the spaces where the green onions and the lettuce were, and it's time to start thinking about our fall plantings. Along the southern edge of the garden, we'll plant beets. They will get some shade from the tomatoes above, helping with the summer heat, and being on the edge of the garden allows the plants to push into the pathway a little if they need more room. I estimate we will start harvesting beets September 15th. The estimated yield per plant is 0.13 pounds, giving us a total harvest of 2 pounds of beets. The last crop to go into the garden is turnips, good for soups or roasted. I estimate the turnips will be ready to harvest September 5th. The estimated yield per plant is about half a pound, giving us a total harvest of 6 pounds of turnips. Estimated harvest for this 21 square foot garden bed is 112 pounds. That equals 5.3 pounds per square foot. I hope this shows you that small gardens can be extremely productive. And with interplanting and layering different plant heights, you can get significant harvest from a small space. In the spring, we harvested 2 pounds of green beans, 4 pounds of radishes, 5 pounds of carrots, and 6 pounds of lettuce. In the summer, we harvested 5 pounds of green beans, 22 pounds of cherry tomatoes, and 48 pounds of paste tomatoes. In the fall, we harvested 2 pounds of beets, 6 pounds of turnips, and 12 pounds of acorn squash. This is my actual garden plan, and I will be taking you along this season from planting to harvest to show you all the succession planting and all the harvest we get from this plan. Be sure to hit subscribe to follow along. If you want to see all the varieties I'm planting in my garden this year, check out this video here.